here are critical factors. You have to have the basic grades. Unfortunately, most of us who really want to be doctors spend most of our time focusing on our test scores and our GPA. You're really good students and you're really engaged in your classes and you work really hard at creating those scores, but that is just the bare minimum. When your application is actually in front of your admissions officer, the things that they're really going to be looking for are not just that you have the bare minimum GPA and the bare minimum MCAS scores, but that you can really show that you have a passion for medicine. Sorry, you're going to see a few cats here. Basic qualifications to be a future physician, meaning that you're really excited about the application and you've thought about it. They're also going to be looking for things like diversity and leadership. So you're going to be the people that they're going to be working with and teaching. So they actually want to like you and they want to actually know that you're going to be a good addition to their team, that you're going to be interesting and fun to sit next to when you're spending long nights charting together. And the way that you really stand out in the end is to have a consistent theme. So you should really try to have a sense of yourself, something that we call an application persona, which ultimately is really just who you are, what unique individual you are. That needs to come through in your application so that people can remember it at the end of the read. So what are the qualifications that people are looking for? And I think, there are a lot of words on this slide, and this is actually something that's very hard to put into words. And these are things like, are you mature? Are you honest? Do you have integrity? Are you compassionate? Are you altruistic? I mean, all this is really to say that medicine is not the same as your average job. And everyone who's signed up for it has figured that out eventually, that really being a doctor is a vocation. And what makes someone a good doctor is not that they checked off all the boxes and they did all the right things, but that they actually have a sense of commitment to the work and the emotional and intellectual capacity to be able to hold all of the challenges that you're faced with when you're caring for someone when they're ill. So I think that, the most helpful thing about this slide is really that you should be asking yourself when you sit down to start to think about your total application and how you're going to present yourself, like, what is it that's going to make me the kind of doctor that I would want to have for myself or that I would want to have for my family member? What kind of person would that person be? And I think that you would think of all of these things. The challenge is really, how do you get that to stand out in your application? The other thing is that diversity is super important. So you have to have something that differentiates you, something that makes you stand out. Unfortunately, I think that a lot of people who go through the application process don't really take the time to think about what their life path has been and how that's led them to want to be a doctor. That's really the stuff that we're interested in. Everyone in medicine is really curious about people. So you have to figure out a way to convey your personal life story. And this is a way that you've probably never really conveyed it to anyone before. What we're really asking is, where do you come from? Why do you want to do this really hard job where you have to be there for people on some of the worst days of their life? The answer to that question is not a simple one. It's probably a really weaving, winding, weird answer. So it's something that I think that really takes a lot of reflection. I like to tell my students that when you're thinking about your personal statement and sitting down to write it, it should actually make you very emotional, because the question is, why do you want to do this? Why do you care about people? Why do you want to take care of people when they're ill? And probably the answer to that is that you've been through some stuff. You've probably experienced some loss. You probably come from a family that has its own complex history and its own complex dynamics. And probably all of your personal life history and all the things that you've been through are what have led you to make this decision that what you really want to do is sit by people's side and advise them when they're making some of their hardest decisions. And you want to be there when they're experiencing some of their most extreme losses. And so those are really the questions you should be asking yourself when you're thinking about, like, who am I and why do I want to do this? And therefore, what do I bring to the table that's unique? Your story isn't like anybody else's. So I think a lot of people think about diversity and they're like, well, I'm not really diverse. I'm kind of a lot like my friends. But if you really reflect on the inside, you probably have a unique story. And that's really what you should be trying to bring out when you're writing your application.